Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. I'm outside Old Trafford with Charlie here to talk about Frenkie de Jong or Jude Bellingham, who would be the better option for Manchester United to go for in the summer, and that's whether Manchester United can even get Champions League football and they can either be able to be in the position to secure one of these two players. But one of these two players could be on the cards to move to Manchester United. We know that we need a midfielder, and a midfielder of this ilk would be absolutely perfect for Manchester United. So make sure you get down in the comments who you would prefer, and we're going to deep delve into it, look at some stats. We've got some stats here going through it with Charlie, and look at who would suit this Manchester United team better. But let's get into it. Charlie, outside Old Trafford,
yes.
Frenkie de Jong, Jude Bellingham, it's the stuff of dreams really, isn't it? I mean, I feel like we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. I know a lot of people in the comments will be saying we probably won't be in the position to sign either, but if we get Champions League football, it is definitely possible.
I mean, look, no one probably expected us to be linked with him, Frenkie de Jong, last summer, the summer just gone, right? And we were, as much as it never came about, and he very much seemed to have kind of made his mind up quite early on. We were linked with him kind of every single day for, what was it, like 3 or 4 months nearly. So I mean, never say never at this point. It's an interesting kind of topic and debate to have, and it's obviously a luxurious position to be put in, you know, having necessarily the not necessarily the pick, but, you know, kind of going after one of these two players. And who says we can't go after both? Why not? Go and get one in January and then the next one in the summer. No,
you know what? I really wish the United board thought the way that you did on that one. But if you look at the two players, I mean, we're talking about before the video. We started videoing live. With Frenkie de Jong and with Jude Bellingham, we definitely need a midfielder to play the same position as them two both play. We saw it in the Newcastle game. We've seen it since Eriksen's been ill. If Eriksen is ill, it completely drops off when you put the likes of Fred in there. We've got McTominay who's developing, but we need somebody better, someone who can be a mainstay in that team. You would like Eriksen to be competing with Bruno even. I know a lot of people think that. So we definitely need a midfielder. And the fact that Erik ten Hag was so hung up on Frenkie de Jong in the summer proves that we need one. We've even said ourselves, Casemiro doesn't solve the Frenkie de Jong problem. It just gives us a very, very good centre defensive midfielder. Frenkie de Jong isn't a centre defensive midfielder. He's someone that can play between the number 10 and between the centre defensive midfielder, and that is really what we're looking at. But starting off with the age, Charlie, Bellingham 19, Frenkie de Jong is 25. So there's a bit of a difference there. In that sort of terms, does the age bother you? If you get Bellingham, you're looking at getting him for quite a few years, you would hope, but with Frenkie de Jong, you're kind of getting someone that's coming into the prime. Yeah,
I mean, Bellingham's, as you say, 19, so it very much could be. Look, he's at Dortmund now, and he's not going to be that. You know, he's, and no disrespect, but he's way too good for Dortmund.
Yeah.
But you know, maybe he wouldn't be the player that he would be without being already at Dortmund and developing under, you know, kind of their tactics and the system over there. But I mean, look, if he was to come to Manchester United, what do we really expect him to be at our club for 10 to 12 years, and with the kind of projected success or lack of success that we're going to no doubt see? I mean, look, he's an unbelievable footballer, and Frenkie de Jong is too. And as I said before, it's a great position to almost be in, to kind of pick which one you want. But I mean, age, look, if you're good enough, you're old enough, right? So, and Bellingham has proved on the biggest stage, you know, against Man City in Champions Leagues, and obviously for England as well more recently, you know, and he's a player that he's going to, if I was Southgate, I'd take him to the World Cup and he'd start every single game alongside Declan Rice for me. He's an unbelievable talent, and as you bring up, he's 19 and he can only really get better. And it's an exciting option to have, even if he doesn't go to Manchester United, he goes to another Premier League club. Look, it's where the best players want to be, right? They want to be in the Premier League and prove that they can go at it with the other best players in the world.
Yeah, and you think about the leadership qualities he has at such a young age. I mean, captaining Dortmund as of recently in the Champions League, in the Bundesliga, at 19 years of age, the way he demands stuff off his teammates in game, you can see it. The way he conducts himself in post-match interviews, in press conferences, he's just so mature, and I think Manchester United are really crying out for a leader like that and someone with them types of ambitions.
Yeah, look, I mean, you can't really praise Bellingham highly enough. There's only positives to say. I mean, look, I don't watch a whole ton of, you know, Dortmund or Bundesliga football, but you never ever see Jude Bellingham had a shocker today. You know, he didn't play well, and look, he's just growing in confidence. He's only going to get better, as I say, and it's just an exciting English talent that hopefully he's going to, you know, prosper in the future, whether he's at United or kind of anywhere else.
But Charlie, there is stats that people do look at, and we've got the stats here. And honestly, when I was looking through these myself, I was pretty surprised. It's the likes of Frenkie de Jong kind of outdoing Bellingham in a few of these stats. Obviously, he's had a longer career, he's had more experience, and they play similar positions, but they are still slightly different players, and they play for different teams in different leagues. So stats always aren't everything, but it's a good insight into looking at the player, looking at their strengths, looking at their weaknesses. So we start off with passes and accurate passes. So accurate passes from Bellingham is 84.6%. De Jong 90.5%, and then passes per 90, Bellingham 48.8%, and De Jong 62.3%. So it looks like De Jong is got the ball a little bit more, he's accurately passing it a little bit more. How important is that, considering we do tend to lose possession quite a lot?
Yeah, of course, you ideally the higher the percentage of, you know, pass accuracy and pass completion, the better, right? And I think even since you've seen Casemiro come in and the ball retention that he shows, and I mean, look, again, you've said passing stats, on just stats in general, don't tell a full picture.
No.
And you know, Casemiro's passing stats probably, if you look at his time at United, probably are around similar, maybe less numbers than that, because he's trying these different passes to unlock, you know, the defence of the other team and the midfielders of the other team, and sometimes they just don't come off. And I mean, it's very difficult to compare them, I think, because they're both so good.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, you know, there's going to be not necessarily weaknesses, but Bellingham might be better at, you know, something over De Jong. De Jong might be better at kind of ball progression, whereas Bellingham, I believe, has scored more goals this season so far compared to De Jong. So there's loads of different ways of kind of analysing this, but I mean, in a roundabout way, I think either of these guys coming into our team improves it tenfold, and especially I actually feel like as well, if we wouldn't have got Casemiro and say we'd got De Jong instead, I think we'd still have a problem, because you'd obviously be playing McTominay at that kind of realm of the defensive midfield position, and we just want a player like Casemiro.
Yeah.
I feel like the midfield, either way you looked at it, we needed a DM and we needed that kind of 8 that
Box
Frenkie
to
de Jong
box.
or Bellingham was going to, the position they're going to play in. And I feel like realistically these players will go into any midfield in the whole of world football, realistically, and start every single game. And it's a shame to actually see the likes of De Jong not actually starting much, you know, for Barcelona over recent times.
It's mind-boggling to me that he isn't getting more minutes, just because of how good he actually is, and the fact that we're talking about potentially wanting to bring one of these to Old Trafford shows that we have grown, and that there is some hope there of getting Champions League football. But the only way that you can ever get one of the likes of these players in is if we get Champions League football. And don't get me wrong, dissecting the stats like this and talking through it logically, we're only kind of picking out different things. These two players are both world-class footballers, in my opinion, and I mean, Bellingham's just at the start of his career. I mean, what a future he's got ahead of him. But if you're looking at Manchester United's midfield now, personally for me, I would say Bellingham he's box to box, but he's probably the slightly more attacking option. De Jong maybe is a little bit more of a steady option, someone that's going to be able to progress the ball maybe, and he will step into the attacking half 100%, but maybe a little bit more comfortable of getting the ball off the back four and progressing it up the pitch. Bellingham maybe more comfortable being offensive on the edge of the box, kind of picking out tackles from there and progressing it further in the attacking third. What do you think Manchester United are crying out for the most, would you say?
Creativity, I think, but that doesn't necessarily need to come from, you know, Bellingham or Frenkie de Jong signing one of these guys. I think Bruno Fernandes is perfectly capable of being that creative midfielder. I just think that he's not performing to the heights that kind of he first set, and I'm a huge Bruno Fernandes fan. I think he's a quality player, quality attacking option and defensive option, right? He runs his nuts off every single game, and I think that's a really positive thing for him, and probably one of the main reasons why he actually is a mainstay, you know, in that team, and probably a reason why he's been given the captaincy as well. Like he works so hard, but I think the main thing we need is just the game is won most of the time within the midfield, and you see our midfield is beaten more times than it's not, right?
Yeah.
We lose the midfield battle quite often. Realistically, I think you put either of them in there. I mean, I'm probably more attracted to Jude Bellingham. I just think younger, kind of better suited for the Premier League. I think, but doing the kind of time that he did at Birmingham as well, obviously playing in the Championship. I know there's levels, but to be 16 I think he was or something, and playing that many games in the Championship is incredible. But yeah, either of them really. This is why it's so hard to dissect who what do we need, who do we need and stuff. But I mean, look, I'd take either of them. I'd chop my arm off for either of them.
Well, when you look at it from a physical standpoint, there's often talks about physicality needed in the Premier League.
Yeah.
There's a massive need for physicality in the midfield. I think Casemiro came in. He's obviously physical. He can definitely do that. I mean, there was concerns when linked to Frenkie de Jong that might be his weakness, maybe physicality. When you look at Jude Bellingham, he's definitely not going to suffer with that. And I think that's so important with Jude. He will come into the midfield and instantly I think he's physical enough to 100% be in there and compete in the Premier League and be a really, if you're looking at physicality, I think he definitely does pip de Jong in that area, but de Jong is also very technical. He can recover the ball very well. So it's difficult because each player does have different strengths. But when you look at the defensive duels won, Frenkie de Jong wins with 72.22, Jude Bellingham with 60.61, recoveries again de Jong with 8.59 and Jude Bellingham with 7.71. And then when we look at forward passes, oh God, I've got that stuck in my hair stuck in my. This is the thing when you do it outside people, the circumstances are a bit different. But then you've got forward passes with Jude Bellingham with 15.3 and Frenkie de Jong with 19.16. So defensive dual recoveries and forward passes, which is what we need from a progressor, progressing it up the pitch. De Jong seems to be winning the battle. I mean, the numbers are very, very small and it's not like night and day. These are both very good players, but when you're looking at someone who we want to progress the ball at the pitch, because we know how hard we find it to break down teams and push that ball through the midfield with pace, Frenkie de Jong looks like, to the stats, the more efficient option. But do you think that's just maybe experience?
I can't lie, I wasn't actually listening for most of what you said just because I was trying not to have a coughing fit, but I think
basically right, de Jong can progress the ball up the pitch better.
Yeah.
He has more progressive passes. He also has more defensive actions per 90.
Yeah.
So realistically, he's winning the ball back and progressing it a little bit better than Jude Bellingham at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think regardless of kind of what they're both doing for either team at this current moment, I think if one of them was to come into Manchester United, I think their game would adapt anyway, and Erik ten Hag would obviously, and they wouldn't be asked to do as much defensively as necessarily, de Jong is doing for Barcelona right now, because
he's playing centre back.
He'd have Casemiro right beside him. So, yeah, it would be a little bit different. And again, it is. I can't lie, when we were linked to de Jong, I feel like it was very much for everyone a roller coaster. We're going to get him, we're not, we're going to get him. Kind of every week it changed. And I know Mark was very. Well, I mean, he was what, on the 90% train, I think, at one point. Yeah.
I think he got T-shirts printed.
Yeah, interesting. But I wish I got one of those. But no, I think it's just an exciting time. And as you've mentioned before, Champions League football is obviously a huge factor and probably a main reason as to why Frenkie de Jong isn't already a Manchester United player. Right? He didn't want to go and play in the Europa League. Completely fair enough.
He's going to be playing in it soon.
Well, that's the ironic thing, isn't it? If Barcelona do go out of their group, then they will be playing in the Europa League, and we could end up coming against them, right? So that would be very, very interesting. But I think for me to kind of round off the point, their game would just adapt under Ten Hag's style, and he'd bring out the best in kind of, he'd buy them for that number 8 box to box kind of position, and he'd bring the best out of them, I think.
Yeah, and the one thing I think we are crying out for, I mean, Eriksen's been doing it, but yesterday Fred, he struggled at doing it a lot. We need someone who's a master at this, and that's someone who can play that deeper role but can also make runs into the box and overlap the winger, overlap the striker, and kind of get in there and score goals. And to this, I think Jude Bellingham would be perfect. We've seen him do it in the Champions League, we've seen him do it in the Bundesliga, and he just keeps getting better and better at it. And when you look at offensive duels per 90, he beats de Jong with 4.4 to 2.86. And when you look at his shots, 35 to 10. Not that we want a player consistently just taking shots and not hitting the target, but more often than not, Jude Bellingham's do. His goal contributions are very, very good. And then you look at progressive runs as well. I think he just beats de Jong on that as well. So you look at Jude Bellingham there, he's kind of more influential in the attacking third, which we are struggling to score goals at the moment. Yes, the service isn't there, and yes, we need to be doing other things to create goals, but he could definitely be someone with a goal threat as well.
Look, and I think it's actually important to notice, and it's something that stats won't necessarily dictate, is I think Jude Bellingham is probably a little bit more of a big game player, if I'm honest. I think, you know, he's proven it. He scored against Man City in Champions Leagues. As you say, he's captaining his team at 19 years old in the Champions League. It's incredible. But don't get me wrong, I think Frankie de Jong would be, you know, I'd take Frankie de Jong in a heartbeat. But yeah, I just think Bellingham almost has that higher ceiling, obviously being younger and the potential that he has, the capabilities that he's shown, as I say, in the Championship and obviously in the Bundesliga. I mean, this guy is, you know, he's as good as you're probably going to find in the current market of you know, English talents.
I think them two players would be absolutely perfect, don't get me wrong, and there'll be people in the comments saying stay in your lane, keep looking at Ruben Neves, keep looking at Tielemans. There'll be people saying that, and I can completely understand it, but as a United fan who wants the best for the team and can see progression under Ten Hag and can see where Ten Hag wants to go, I think either of them players come in and transform our team big time. So it'd be really good to get Champions League football and kind of be in the race to potentially sign one of them players, because don't get me wrong, if we get Champions League football this year, there's no reason why we can't be in the race to sign either of them players. But you've got teams like Chelsea with big money to spend, Manchester City with big money to spend, Liverpool as well are going to be looking for a midfielder, and there's going to be competition worldwide for both of them two players. We've seen it with De Jong. Chelsea were ready to beat us to it in the summer if he did want to leave. Just had Fabrizio Romano on the show saying Chelsea would be willing to offer bigger wages, pay more money, so there is competition there. And we know about Jude Bellingham. I think every top European club in the country is going to, not in the country, in the world, is going to be looking at him in summer when he does decide to leave Borussia Dortmund. I think it's basically nailed on that he will leave. But Charlie, before we round this video up, I think you said that you prefer to sign Jude Bellingham.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of a trick question almost, because it's like either of them, right? Either of them, I don't actually care. But yeah, if I had to pick, if I had the luxury of a choice, it would be Jude Bellingham. Yes.
It's like saying, would you rather go to Barbados or Dominican Republic? It's like they're both pretty good destinations, aren't they? You're not going to turn your nose up at either. But yeah, either of them would be brilliant. But in order to do it, we've got to get Champions League football, and to do that, how important is it that we spend money in January?
Yeah, I mean, look, other teams will spend money in January. The World Cup's going to be a huge factor coming into, you know, it's in the middle of the season, right? It's something that we've never seen before. So it's going to completely throw teams off, and transfers are going to need to happen because there's going to be injuries through the World Cup. Before the World Cup, we're seeing it. Players are going to miss out, and it's a shame to see. But look, it's, I mean, I don't think either of these players will move in January, in all honesty. I think it's time to, you know, strengthen the squad as a whole.
That's right, yeah.
And that would be January, and then obviously next summer you go for the big guns.
Well, that's the thing, it's a knock-on effect. You've got to strengthen the squad in order to get Champions League football. Teams around us are going to be doing it that potentially are already better than us, probably are already better than us. We're punching above our weight at the moment with the lightness of our squad. We've seen it as soon as Eriksen gets ill, the performance as a whole completely drops off. Our squad is thin. You've got Dowlitt right back on his own. If he gets injured, it's Lindelof there. Like, we have got a thin squad, and in order to secure Champions League football, which is still up in the air, we've got to do something in January. And this is a knock-on effect to sign these sort of players, which would be a dream for any United fan to sign, and I think would fit in perfectly. Personally, for me, I would also just go for Jude Bellingham. But I think Frankie de Jong is also a very, very good player to be going for. But make sure that you guys get in the comments down below who you would go for. Were you surprised at any of these stats? De Jong a little bit further ahead of Bellingham with the stats, but you know what they always say, you can't fool the eye test, and Jude Bellingham on the eye and when he's in matches is always an influential figure, and he's going to be a brilliant midfielder for a top club. Whether it is Manchester United, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not too certain on that one, but thank you everyone for listening. Charlie, thank you for being here.
No, as always, a pleasure.
And hopefully we sign one of these players in 2023. We'll have to wait and see, and if we do, we'll come back to this video and we'll have a look. But thank you for listening, guys. Get your comments in down below, and we'll see you on the next one.